I want to say just like thanks, bro, for the time.
Yeah, for sure. Now it's kind of crazy that you like reached out. Like I think I've always wanted to be in this space where I could talk about some things that I've been doing. So this was like a good outlet too. So when you did reach out, I was like, yeah, this is cool because I always been trying to like start to showcase because I got a lot of stuff going on right now, and I've been trying to figure out how I could start to showcase it. So this could
that's what's
help me like formulate some ideas of really put out who I am. Because I was surprised that you like you knew who I was, but I feel like I haven't really I didn't know people was paying attention type shit. So
that's true.
That was like confirmation that people are actually paying attention to what I got going on. Because I have a hard time like promote. I'm super like insecure, so I'm like have a hard time like promoting myself. So I didn't even know people really was picking up on some of the things I had going on.
Yeah, nah, bro. Like I was saying, I think it had to been a minute ago, but it was like I think was on your Instagram. This must like years ago, but you think you was rocking like the fitteds with like the pea coat, like kind of like preppy, but like still have like like maybe like some dunks on or something like that. Like, and I was like, damn, like this, like you had like a swag that I was just like, yo, that's like.
In like high school, in college, I was working at Men's Warehouse, like that was my part-time job, but I was working there for years. So I started like I was real into like the suit shit and like because I was doing that for work. So I could have been doing that phase. But that's dope that it's dope.
And then so once I got just to see like now seeing what you're doing, I was just like definitely I will want to talk to you. Just like be like you like the ideal like guest that I would like want to talk to because one, you from the city, you got like a city experience, but then you also you're a black professional and like you're doing like you're doing well, you're doing like great things, and
appreciate that.
I just like I know you definitely got like great information and like just it's a lot that
we definitely gonna unload into it and get into all of that stuff. Because it is, I do think I got some good information to share. It's gonna be just hard I'm gonna just have to make sure I formulate it in a good way. But I'm happy that you did reach out. Like I said, like I always wanted to be in a position where I could start to share my knowledge with, especially with like people from Baltimore. Like like because Baltimore specifically, you just kind of see two different lanes, and Baltimore doesn't. It wasn't until I went to college that I realized that it was so much more out. Like
I'm just saying,
like when you growing up in Baltimore, you just see certain things, but until you go to college and you start meeting people from all over, is when you really start to realize that there's other ways to kind of do things.
Right. Yeah.
So
that's like one of the like main, well, not one of the main ones, but like some of the like discussions that I've had with people previously is just as far as I don't know if we really publicize or like we don't really put it out there, in Baltimore, like what people are doing, like what the other side, it's like, and this is my perception, but like a lot of it, I just every time, and I was actually talking to my girl about this, but every time that I see like black guys like and they they dress well, they might be like out doing whatever, but I automatically assume that they doing something illegal rather than like they getting it like a professional way, and and I don't know if like I don't know if that's just like my perception, but like I feel like that is more in our face, like the hustler rather than or like the hustler in the sense of illegal stuff rather than like professional, like getting it that way.
For sure.
I was just having yesterday I was having a discussion and we were talking about JayZ, and I mean like this is not necessarily like completely related, but we were talking about, so like we know that JayZ makes business moves. We know like that like as far as it was the LVHM thing, Louis Vuitton. And
that helped. Right.
So he had like made that sale with the Ace of Spades, I think, and then he also did something else like with Tidal. Like we know that he's doing these things, but we also see what he does, like the image, but we don't get to see we don't get the inside scoop on like what he's actually doing in these meetings, or like what it actually takes in order to make these business moves, or like how to network, or how to how to speak a certain way, or like how to even get your vision going. You know what I mean? We only see like the results rather than, you know, like really getting to know, you know, like the nitty gritty of things. Like,
so the thing about JayZ, I feel like he's always thinking like 10 steps ahead. Like, and I think it's to the point where he's becoming, it's more than just him. He's becoming like the face of like unapologetically black. You know what I'm saying? Like from the hair to the like, you know, just the way that he carry himself. He's becoming like the staple fit. Like to me, like I would put him on, there's like tiers of like just overall influence. He's probably the number one just pure influence on black people. And then you have other people in this category like Pharrell. Pharrell was probably like my top like idol. And then you have like Kanye. But I think, you know, the level that JayZ is on is he's making these big time moves. He's in these conversations with these big time, you know, white people, but also is like holding it down for just like, you know, us as a race. And I remember back in the, like probably a couple years ago, it was like some things that was going on with the NFL, and you know, they kind of, he was like, I think they asked him to be a part of the NFL or something. He was like, nah, because of the whole Kaepernick thing. But then he kind of played the situation where they came to him and, you know, reached out to him to become like the face of, of you know, the culture aspect of it. So I think he's always been thinking like 10 steps ahead. But the boundaries that he's breaking down is you know, for me, it's just something I can look up to, and people of color that have an idol that, you know, typically growing up, we think of it as our idols like Martin Luther King and these like political figures that we read in the textbook, but we never had someone where we could really connect to. And I think, you know, the people that, you know, are good idols for our generation would be someone like JayZ. Obama is, you know, because he's super relatable. But I think JayZ is becoming that, you know, that political figure, but just being that person for people of color to kind of relate to and look up to, because he's so like, you know, I think there's a lot of people can relate to him because he's from the streets, you know what I'm saying? But he's in these situations where he's showing that, he was from the streets and he did the street stuff, but now he's in a situation where he can actually do these things that are like, in a positive manner, but being true to himself. So
That's what
I think that's like the key component.
Being like remaining authentic. Being a black billionaire, you know, and growing out free forming, you know, locks or dreads. That's But I think that speaks so much volumes to like, you know, I think we always needed someone who we can relate to, but also look up to, and he's becoming that face. So I think he's pretty dope. And you know, some of the barriers he's breaking down, like I think in general there's been this whole like, and I speak on the hair aspect. Hair has always been something where if you're not conformed to a, you know, white standard, blah blah blah, but he's so powerful that it's like you need him. Like, you know, he don't have to switch up, he don't have to code switch. Like, you know, a lot of this corporate world is code switching, and I think there's becoming a space where you could start like, and I hate to say this, but George Floyd and that whole like black awareness that popped up within this past year has started to allow people to become more comfortable in their selves. And I think he's also pushing those boundaries of just being yourself and, you know, being true within. And if it don't fit, then you don't have to, you shouldn't do it. Like, you should only be in a situation where it fits, it allows you to be your personal self. And if that doesn't work, you shouldn't, you know, be in a situation or have to code switch to be in that situation. And I think he's a prime example of that. And that's, you know, good for us as a people to have that, you know, person to kind of look up to, for sure. I've definitely noticed in the corporate world, there is more of a push and more of, you know, just like that, they want people to just bring their authentic selves to work and stuff like that.
And I think like, you know, that being your authentic self, us as black people, we have unique perspectives, we have unique upbringings that, you know, I think has to be relevant because us as black people, we push culture, we push the narrative, we are like, I would say what is cool. Black people is what's cool. Black culture is what's cool. And I think, you know, people are starting to pay attention, like, start to accept this as, and I don't say it's totally corrected, but paying attention that we, you know, have these unique perspectives and we should be in these conversations. Like, and part of that is being comfortable with who you are. You shouldn't feel like, you know, you have to code switch or switch things up. And I think, corporate world is starting to open up to that to an extent, but it's still a lot of work to be done. But I think people like JayZ allows that conversation. It allows people to become more comfortable because he is himself. He looks like he does, but he's also handling business.
Right.
So I think that's good.
And he's just showing that if you have that image, that doesn't mean that you're this thing.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like he's showing that like we are more complex than the stereotype that's placed on us. That image that's placed on us.
Right.
That's crazy though. Like I even have certain biases where I just assume something of a black person, even like in the fact that I'm a black man, but like just not thinking that when I'm talking to somebody, if they'll be able to discuss certain things on a certain like level, like their like understanding of things, or just like how they feel about certain stuff. Like I even have certain biases when it comes to that. So,
and I think what you mean like stereotype biases? Yeah. I mean, and I must say like off the record, us as black people, we have to hold ourselves a little bit accountable. Like, we have to want better for ourselves, and that's some like part of the issue is like. Like black on black crime, like for instance, like when a police officer kills a black person is a thing, but we're also not holding ourselves accountable because we shooting each other, killing each other. But I think, part of that is not our fault. It's just instilled like over generations, just, we've been taught to kind of hate ourselves, been taught to think that we're lesser than, so, the things that we as black people, like, We've never been offered the same social services. We live in, neighborhoods that are undesirable. We've been set back so long that it's like, it's hard for us as a people to kind of work together to kind of, want better for each other. But I think that's something us as black people, we need to kind of figure out and start to, bring each other up as opposed to fight each other. Because it does get down to a point where it's like, I wouldn't say us against them, but it's a huge gap between people of color and white people, and for us to start to knock that gap down, we have to work together. And I think it's been a recent push of like, acknowledging black businesses. It's been a recent push for that. I think we just have to keep it up, and it's a long way to go. But I think that narrative and how things are turning is starting to. And just me as a black professional, I've noticed that there's been a lot more attention on people of color because, for a long time, our perspective has not been showcased or people are not interested in, our unique perspectives. But now there's a push for seeking out black individuals. I've noticed like, even just in a sense of like grants and stuff that's being allocated. There's a lot of money being allocated to black people that's doing things, and
and people are also just becoming more aware of the benefits of having a diverse group of people. Like when I know a lot of people talk about the scenario with Gucci where they had released the like blackface. I don't remember what it was. I think it was like like one of those. I
remember like H&M did the similar thing.
But it was like they were pretty much saying that if you had a black person in those conversations, then they
stuff
might
like
be
that
able to be like, don't do that. So it's benefits even when it comes down to like the profits of a company, just being able to have different perspectives.
Because like even the black dollar is is important. Like it's just overall like population. White people are like more. It's percentage wise, there is a lot more than black people. I think the numbers I recently was reading that the population of white people has decreased and black people numbers have decreased, but I think the black dollar is still relevant. So they have to consider our perspective because our spending, we buy consumer goods, and you want that black dollar. So companies are starting to realize, okay, black people account for this amount of our profit, so we need to market towards that. And you can even say like McDonald's, they do a lot of black campaigning. I'm not saying that it's always good, but they realize that their profit share is a lot to do with black people as well. So they're starting to like push that for sure. So that's something that I've noticed with companies Just starting to trying to have, people in these positions to connect. And I think a lot of times is, even though they put these people in like just people of color in these positions, you have to have someone who's really like understand. Like, it's one thing to just be a person of color, but you need to be a person from color that was experiences, that know like what it is that makes a black person, not just be a person of color.
Yeah,
kind of got to understand. You got to have to come from that upbringing to really understand.
Right, definitely. And I feel like we touched on it a little bit, but I was gonna ask about just the support or the idolization. I don't even know if that's the right word, but do we idolize the black professional? Do you feel like we, or are we starting? I guess I feel like we might be starting to get to that point. I
think just growing up, it's always been rapper, athlete, and these are careers that, like, the chances of making it to these things, like the chances that you are to make it to a successful rapper is rare, or a successful athlete is rare. But it's like a meal ticket. Like, if you do make it, then your whole, like, by you becoming an athlete, your whole family entire family bumps up. So I've noticed that, like, with kids, a lot of energy has been put into like sports. Like, I think parents are starting to push sports more than education, or equal. And I get it, because it's like you invest in your child, he becomes nice in sports, your whole family can come up. But I think as a people, we're just starting to like I know for me, my parents, they didn't go to college. I was the first to go to college, but as kids are starting to go to college, and us as black people starting to go to college, then we have kids, and then we push them to go to college. We're starting to push into these professional, but it's fairly new for us as people. So I think prior to this, we always saw, like, black people, I think we're just genetically more athletic of people. Like, in basketball, 90% of the basketball players are black. Because we're just more athletic. But that's all we saw, like, growing up is, you want to make it big, you want to either be in the streets, or you want to play ball. But as we are starting to go to college, and as things are changing, we are starting to see that there's like other avenues, and even just like this whole social media thing. Like, this is something that didn't exist prior, but we're starting to realize, because we grew up with a phone in our hands, that's a place where black people can fit in, and you could be professional, like be successful. But I think the outlets of how to be successful is starting to open it up. And we as people are starting to put ourselves in spaces like going to college, and so I think the outlook on successful is starting to open up, and I think that's a good thing, and I think it will continue to open up. So being a baller or a drug dealer is starting to become a little less idolized. It's still going to be idolized, but I think people are starting to see that there's other avenues to kind of get into it for sure.
And you had spoke on like being a first generation college student. How, when you first got, so you started at Morgan, or did you?
So I originally went to Hampton University in Virginia. For my freshman year, but then I wasn't doing too well, and ended up transferring to Morgan, and I finished up at Morgan. So I started off there, and then finished up at Morgan.
And that's what I was gonna ask. How was that? Just that, like. So for me, being, so my sister, she went to college. I have an older sister, she went to college. So I did have her, as far as like, just some sort of gauge, I guess, or like some sort of like conversation when it comes to college and college courses. But I still didn't really have as much of direction, I guess, or like a feel of what was needed when I got to college. Did, like you were saying, that something happened at Hampton. So what do you think that direction?
So college is, it helped me, and I think it helps a lot of people more than just education. For me, when I went to Hampton, I was just like, and we were talking about this a little earlier, just when you live in Baltimore all your life, you're just kind of trained to think a certain way. It wasn't until I went to Hampton is I started meeting different people, meeting different people from different areas, and then I started to be like, oh, like what I've been all this year, I don't think that's like what I've been growing up to be. I don't think that's really me. I think I think my interests start to grow a little bit more by seeing different perspectives, meeting different people, and I think just the networking portion is, if not like, because I'm torn on the fence, like if college is really worth it, like if the debt, the knowledge that you learn, is it really worth it? But for me, I feel like the networking and the people that I've met was probably the top thing that I got out of college, because I was putting this, like met people from the West Coast, like and was just putting all these people in the dorm. Ideas are being shared, relationships are being developed, and this is relationships that I still have to this day. But just that networking component is huge. So I always advocate for like going to HBCUs, because you're put in situations where it's all of y'all black, different perspectives, and you can figure some stuff out. And I think that just holds value. Like I think a lot of it has to do with who you know, your relationships that you develop. Super important. College does that. I mean, if you don't go to college, you probably know the same people in your hometown city, but by stepping into college, your network immediately goes from your hometown city to the East Coast, and people all over the East Coast, and and that network just continues to grow. So I definitely think college, and me spending a year down there, I met some people, and then moved to Morgan, and I met some people, and I always kept those relationships going. And like even in life now, like I live out here, and there's a lot of people I knew from Hampton that's out here doing good things, and I still have those connections where I can always hit them up, brainstorm or collaborate on some things. So definitely beneficial.
That's tough. So did you feel like you first did you bring like like a city mentality at first to Hampton, I guess?
Yeah, so I remember like when I was leaving high school, I remember Gucci Man was like a big thing. I went to my freshman year, I had fronts in my mouth, like I had like dopes, phone pauses. I came on, like nobody really. That was such a Baltimore thing. Like I had Samos on, like they was like, yo, you country, like they was wearing like Sperry's, and like I really was coming down there straight Baltimore. And that was probably like first semester, and then I started meeting different people, and I started like switching up, just like, who I was, opening up and trying new things.
Was that difficult, like to do, or?
It wasn't. I think
like natural. I guess
it was natural, because you got to understand, like when you're in Baltimore, it's a whole bunch of people like you. When I went to Hampton, it wasn't a lot of Baltimore people down there, so it was like either, I'd hang out with just Baltimore people, or start to open up to different people and start to, So it just kind of got washed out, and then by me not being in Baltimore, I just started to like, because I would say I am from Baltimore. I love Baltimore, and that's like my hometown. But I don't think I align with a lot of like Baltimore. Like people wouldn't think that I'm from there because I don't align with. And I think that's just by time of just being away. You start to figure out what it is that you like. But it wasn't until college that I was given the opportunity to kind of figure out like who I am or who I want to be. When you in Baltimore, like in high school, you just kind of see this is just what's cool. And you just kind of follow.
So these are like just it's easy to like structures almost.
So I think that was beneficial for me to help find out who I am. For sure.
I had so going to BSA, that was like my first exposure, I guess, to like
just different
lifestyles, like just people just artsy, creative, like just dressing different, being more themselves, but I still was bringing that just like
Baltimore,
like
and I mean no, that's who you got to be yourself too. Like if that's who you are, like what I'm saying, like by no means lose yourself in the whole thing. So
man, I was about to say something else about that. I can't remember what it was. But yeah, I know that I definitely, like, I had a similar experience. And so when I had interned in Ohio, and this was college, maybe like my sophomore, or like junior year, maybe. But even going to Ohio and and that was only for 3 months, but I felt almost like not like weight, but like I felt more at ease as far as like just doing what I felt I wanted to do rather than like it was like a certain level of like comfort that I felt like I know like it was just like this one thing that it comes to mind a lot, and I had talked to some people about it, but so while I was in Ohio, I think I must have bought some Birkenstocks, but back home, you know, like as far as certain things that like are acceptable, I guess, like just style wise,
right? It wasn't quite as acceptable.
So while I was out there, I was rocking Birkenstocks with like no socks. It just kind of like just comfortable, like just going.
You know what's crazy is like, and I think Baltimore is typically late with stuff. Like I think, like, and I see this by like skinny jeans. I remember in high school, like me and my friends, we were like real into like MySpace, and I think we were a little bit different than typical Baltimore because we were so involved with MySpace and social media. That's kind of what we grew up, and we was like big into that. And I remember it was like, I don't know if you remember like the Pack. They had to like got my Vans on and it looked like sneakers. We was real into that, and we started wearing skinny jeans and Vans like because of the Pack. But the Pack was in Baltimore, and for you to know about the Pack, you would have to be deep into social media. So we started like, you know, wear skinny jeans, like wear colors and similar to the Pack, and everybody would just look at us like, yo, like what's good with them? Like, you know what I'm saying? They wearing little ass pants and all these colors. Are they gay? Da da da. But then to see where Baltimore is now, like, you know, everybody wears skinny jeans. Everybody is like, you know what I'm saying? So it's like Baltimore is a city, like it seemed like they always, you know, we always shut things down, new ideas, but then, you know, later down the line want to pick it up. But I wish, you know, it felt like Baltimore was a little more open to, you know, new things. Because I think it's new ideas, like in, like for instance, like DC, it's an area where so many different cultures connecting, but I think people are more open to different things and different people, whereas Baltimore is like, yo, if he ain't like you, then he's weird, or like, you know, if he ain't, you know, wearing, you know, a Baltimore brand, then he's weird, or you know. I think that's where, you know, the disconnect is.
It's crazy. So when I was talking to, I was having like, I did another podcast yesterday, but we were talking about something similar, and it was just, it's crazy that like that same like your thoughts are like like so relatable. You know what I mean? Like I experienced like similar things, and it's just like it's crazy that experience is so similar. But I don't know if people necessarily like talk about it. Like I don't even know if there's a conversation on it. Like it's crazy that like you had a similar experience.
Yeah, and I mean, but it's always been that way, and that's you know why I always, you know, like I think Baltimore is growing. I think Baltimore has this new like creative class that is like starting to, and it's like some people, some power hitters that been doing this for a while. But I think, you know, Baltimore is starting to open up to like new ideas, and I think a lot of it has to do with like Micah and this creative, you know, atmosphere that's been popping up. So it's great things going on, but it's also this, you know, dynamic where a lot of people are just unwilling to accept new things and new ideas. But I think it's starting to change.
For sure.
For the better.
I think so too. Cause I've even been noticing like new artists like getting a little bit of buzz coming from Baltimore, but like they don't look like the typical rap artists or you know whatever coming from Baltimore.
Right. So, no, I know exactly what you're talking about.
And it might be what's it called too, like social media as well. Just like social media more open because you have more exposure to just what's out there, and there's no I guess real set norm when it comes to style and stuff like that. So I think like because we can see this now more, like it's more in our face. Like I can get on Instagram and I can see somebody in California, or I can see somebody in Florida, or you know all of these different places. So it's like, oh, okay, like you know, it's not like
not just right. No, you're right. And I think that's something that like my friends and I, we kind of tapped in early, like with MySpace, because MySpace wasn't as powerful as Instagram, but it did allow us to be inspired by like New York and LA. Like I think we were heavily inspired by LA culture, and that's kind of how it kind of shaped us to be who we are.
Yeah.
Cause you just see something you like on Instagram and you start to try to mimic it, and you know. But now Instagram is so like, cause I remember back in the day MySpace wasn't like a phone thing. It was you had to run home and do it on the computer. But now with Instagram just being on your phone, it's like nonstop.
Yeah.
It's nonstop. So, you know, people are start to see things and start to imitate things, and people are becoming more open to different ideas because you can see it.
Yeah. So I haven't even gotten into like, you know, what you're doing now, but I wanted to also like just speak on a little bit as far as Instagram. Like your usage, do you feel like you're able to like, I guess like balance when it comes to being on social media, but then like versus, you know, being focused in on like whatever your career is or the work that you're doing? Do you ever feel like that gets in the way? Do you have to like limit anything?
It's great. Instagram is powerful. Like it's super powerful. And I mean, yes, it has negative, like, you know, but I think us as like millennials, us as people who grew up with the phone, we are positioned better than older heads, like, and I think my generation, I'm 30 this year, I think my generation was the first generation that are like socially inclined, and I can never, like, I would never let that go, because that offers me a unique perspective compared to someone who's 40 who didn't, you know, like my mom, like I teach my mom phone things, and like, you know, I know that, so I'm able to connect with Gen Zs and the younger generation, because I understand that compared to like older people, they don't understand, they don't quite understand why we record everything we do and why we put it online, but it's such a marketing tool. Like it's getting to the point where you have to market yourself. Yeah. You have to market yourself, like, and I think social media is that. It's
like you have to be on social media.
You have to be like, you have to
the reach, you know.
Like so much, like your Instagram is your business card.
Yeah.
Your Instagram is your business card. So all of that is important because it shows who you are, and like, you know, and that's why I'm like, I want to showcase who I am. I'm still trying to figure it out, but that's something that you gotta like think about. Like you gotta have a social presence, because you know a DM is probably equally as powerful as an email, like getting some business started, like, because it's all like track record. It's like your portfolio. It's like your business card. It's like LinkedIn. It's everything involved. Like so many business opportunities can start on Instagram.
Yeah.
So I think it's relevant, and you know I don't. It's not going to go anywhere. Like you can even see it now. Like this whole trend of putting your professions in your bio, like, is important.
Yeah, that's true.
But me in a position that I grew up with social media, like I know the importance of it, and it's something that I always gotta maintain. Like yes, you gotta do the groundwork, like in real life, but if you're not putting it on Instagram, did it really happen? Like nobody knows that it happened. So you could be doing the greatest stuff professionally, but if you're not showcasing it, you're missing out on prospective opportunities. So yeah, it's a balance of real life action and promoting on social media. The only thing about social media where it gets tricky, you only highlight the good things, like, so it's not a true reflection of what you are. It's just curated to what you want to, you know, show. So it's good in a sense where, you know, you decide what it is, but it's something that you actively have to be thinking about, to make sure that your portfolio is up to date. Like, you know, your business card is actively reflecting who you are, and that's to me what social media is. Like, if I want to be in this position next year, I need to start, like, you know, you always got to be prepared. Like, if you were to meet this person that you want to work with, the first thing they're going to do is look up on your Instagram. Like, you got to make sure that that's, you know, up to par for where you want to go. Yeah. So it's definitely relevant.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely. So I want to get now like more into well, first I guess, did you when you got to Hampton or Morgan? Like, did you already decide on architecture? Or
So at Poly, I went to Poly for high school.
Right.
I took an architectural drafting course in 11th grade. And for some reason, I really enjoyed the class. And the crazy thing about high school is they want you to have it figured out. They want you to know what you want to be. Like, you go to college, you declare a degree. I mean, a major. And I had no idea. Like, you have no idea what you want to be. And if I hadn't taken the architectural drawing class, I wouldn't have knew that that's what I wanted to do. But by the fact that Poly exposed me to that as a profession, I was like, okay, I like this class. I had no idea what I want to be. I was like, all right, I'm gonna just try this in college. Like, so. At the time, I wanted to go to Temple University. That was my first choice. But to get into that program, you needed a portfolio. And for a student coming out of high school, if you had no idea, you needed a portfolio. And I'm like, I didn't have a portfolio at the time because, I'm in high school. I didn't know I didn't know what a portfolio was.
Yeah, right.
I didn't have that, so I didn't get into that program. I got into the school, but I didn't get into the architecture program at Temple. And then I got into the architectural program at Hampton University, and they gave me a little scholarship, so I decided to go there. But if it wasn't for that class, I wouldn't have known, and I just that was my first introduction into a degree. Like, if I didn't choose architecture, I don't know what I would have chosen. And so from 11th grade, I just kind of stuck that out. Like, I literally just stuck it out because I didn't really know what else I wanted to do. But it's been ups and downs. But I always just knew I had to pick something, and I felt like that was the only, and the crazy thing is, architecture as a profession, it just got cool. Like, back in the day, I think Instagram made it cool. Like, you see these people reposting cool designs. Prior to this Instagram movement, it was a profession that was really not really known about, but it's becoming more mainstream. But I've just stuck with it. But I've realized the cool factor that is Instagram is making the profession become, but it's just a lack of people of color right now. But I think as Instagram is growing, people of color are starting to gravitate I like design and there's a lot more black designers coming up now because of Instagram, I think. Even Morgan's program this year is probably the biggest amount of incoming freshmen they had for the architecture program. And it's because Instagram and people are starting to see this as a profession early. Only reason I knew this as a profession is because I took an architectural drafting class in high school, and a lot of people don't get that. Only reason I got that is because I went to Poly, which was an engineering and math school, engineering and science school. So they introduced me to that. But if I didn't go there, I would not even known. But the good thing is now is Instagram, it kind of puts that in your face. So as a young person, you could be like, oh, I like this, and decide that architecture is what you want to do earlier. And it's it's putting more people of color in the profession. Now it's just getting people in these spaces. It's a white profession totally, but once we get, start breaking barriers and getting people in these spaces, there'll be room for the next upcoming designers to fit in. And so I think it's all moving in a good direction. And I think social media plays a lot into it, to be honest.
Yeah, bro. One thing that I've noticed, and this was something I guess I struggled with this as well, but so you had mentioned going to Temple, you had to already have a portfolio. So that means that these people were already being sort of groomed into it.
Yes, and it's because their parents was educated and they knew that this was a lane. Whereas my parents didn't go to college. They probably knew of architecture, but they didn't really know. And I'm not even sure they still I don't know if they totally know now. But you ask the white kids, their parents knew and pushed them in these directions.
They already had
and had a portfolio and they was already thinking about it. But now if I have a kid, I'm educated enough, I can do the same and push them in the direction, start them thinking towards that. But that's the only way that we close this gap is get people educated and be able to push that information to their off seeds and continue the cycle. But white people, they've been doing this for a long time.
Yeah, right.
And we're just starting to get into these spaces.
When I went, also when I was in Ohio interning, there was a few people that I had met where they were like, I would ask them, like, how'd you get into, so it was electrical engineering, it was like called protection and control engineering, that was the like role that I had, but I was like, how did you get into this? And they would be like, yeah, my dad, he's an engineer and this is what he does. And like, it was almost like they were already introduced to this like from the very beginning.
Yeah. And because their parents know what makes money, they know the professions that makes money, and they if they pay for their kids to go to college, and they're like, okay, if I'm paying for you to go to college, you need to return my investment and make some money. So they are put into these professions, which is good because that's how they keep money rolling. You know what I'm saying? And then when they graduate, their parents is already plugged in. You can get them a position, and that's just how they keep the money. Whereas us, we just starting to really tap into that professional atmosphere, and just find a lane other than drugs or sports. But it's still a long ways to go for sure.
Yeah. So getting into your role now, like, so I don't really have any like sort of like idea, I guess, what you do, on a like daily basis, but like how. I guess what do you do?
Right. Yeah. We can talk about that first. Yeah. I went to Morgan undergrad and grad for architecture. And it's
so you went to grad school?
Yeah, at Morgan as well. It's been a long ride. Graduated undergrad 2014. Graduated graduate school 2020. So just a year ago. But I've always when I graduated undergrad. Working retail, I knew that I spent 5 years in the program. I know I invested all this money. I was like, okay, if I invested all this money, I need to work in the field. Like but I couldn't find a job, so I was working retail. Just typically just getting by, little part-time job, and then I started out. I was on Craigslist, and I found a job. Working a couple hours for this small-time architect in Bel Air. I hated the job, but I needed something on my resume at the time. Like, I couldn't get a job. Like, I didn't get, and I wasn't the best student in school. Like, I pledged Alpha, Alpha Phi Alpha at Morgan. So I was like, I was doing work, but I also was like in a social mix. So I was like not doing the best work. Didn't have the best grades, so I, my school didn't place me with jobs. Like I didn't get internships. So when I graduated, I just was like, damn, like I spent all this time and I had nothing. My school got me nothing. So I was on Craigslist. I found a little job on Craigslist. Was working that part-time for about a year. I hated it, but I needed some experience. And then I was like, yo, like, this is not life. I'm not making no money. Like, yes, I'm in the field, but I don't have no room. And I was like, all right, let me just go back to school. Like, so I went back to school at Morgan. I was like, I guess if I get a master's, I could maybe get a job. Like, but you gotta understand, like, the whole concept of school is just like you getting more debt. Like, I had to take out loans for grad school is expensive. Yeah. But what I did realize is once I went back to grad school, I started getting, more attention from jobs. So then it wasn't until, I went back to grad school, I got a pretty decent job at a local architectural firm in Baltimore. It's called BCT Architects. They're a pretty big firm. They actually doing a renovation at Lexington Market right now. So they do a lot of big projects in Baltimore, and they had a headquartered office in Baltimore. And they're pretty big time. So I was working there for about a year and a half. And, similar situation, like only black guy, lowest on the totem pole. I ended up getting laid off. No real explanation, but I was hurt. Like, you know what I'm saying? I thought I finally had got a job, and it was just like randomly, they just laid me off. No real reason. Like, I'm like, damn, like that shit was like hurt. Like, so I was like, I didn't have a job for a while, but I still was in school. So I was still, going to class, getting my, blah, blah, blah. But then I started bouncing around, got a couple other jobs, and then it wasn't until like 2 years ago, I was like, all right, I'm about to graduate from Morgan with my master's. I need to figure out what's next for me. Like, I knew I didn't want to be in Baltimore, so I always liked DC. So I was like, all right, I know I'm about to graduate with my master's. Let me start applying for some jobs out here. I had ended up getting a job in DC at my last company, and then I decided to move out here. And I still was going to school, so I was back and forth, Baltimore, working out here, Baltimore. I was living in Baltimore at the time. Then I moved out to DC, but I was going back to Morgan for class like 2 days a week. And then that all worked out, finished up, and then was working at my current company for about, and it's a company called Street Sense. It's a architecture firm, design firm in Bethesda, but they do a lot of like local DC work. So I was working with them for a while, but for about 2 years, and I realized there wasn't really no room for me to grow. And at this time, I also was like doing like freelance work. So one of my good friends plugged me in with a guy that's I wouldn't call him a developer, but he's doing a lot of projects out in DC, cultural projects for like black people and black businesses. He tapped me in with him, and I've been like doing freelance work for him for like 2 years. And it wasn't until like recently that, the latest 2 projects that I did with him got like a lot of attention. Like he has a Sandlot series. So he started off with Blind Wino, which was a cultural center in Southwest DC, which is not too far from here. Pretty much was an abandoned church, and he came in, reprogrammed the church, painted it, and it became a gallery space for like artists, black people, and it went really, really well. And then he started the Sandlot series, and I was kind of involved with that from the inception and kind of doing like design, like concepts for him. But it wasn't until his latest 2 projects that I was involved with that got a lot of attention, and it was during the George Floyd riots, because a lot of businesses was putting, grant money into black businesses, and he was one of the recipients of, like he got a big partnership with Uber Eats, and this project got a lot of attention. So I met my current boss based on the Sandlot Project, because the Sandlot Project is in Georgetown. I don't know if you're familiar with that area, but it's like a historically affluent neighborhood in DC. Like it's probably the median house is $1 million. It's a very, like, maybe it's like Canton in Baltimore. Just that type of historic prevalence. And anyway, my studio head lives in Georgetown, and he visited the project, and he was just amazed that we were able to push a project that was catered towards black businesses in an area that has no black prevalence. Like there's no black businesses in Georgetown. It's purely a white neighborhood, and we were able to put a business model that showcased black businesses and put black businesses in an area where black people were kind of not allowed. And he was, very intrigued by that concept, and we were having conversations, and he ended up hiring me into his studio, and that's where I currently work now. But it wasn't until I was able to put myself into this area, DC, because I always knew that DC had a large number of like black businesses. Like DC has DC PG County has like the highest amount of affluent black people. There's black money here, like black businesses has always been booming. So I knew, as compared to Baltimore was like picking up, but I always felt like it was more opportunity as me as a black professional out here than in Baltimore.
Definitely.
But it wasn't until I actually put myself in this space that I was able to meet this guy and start to work with this guy and actually have projects that are being built. And that's pretty much taking my career to the next level, because then I was, hired at this firm, which is like a global. I had no idea that, like I said, I wasn't a great student in college. I wasn't, I passed, but I had C's. I didn't have the higher GPA. So I never thought that I would be at a firm of this caliber, because, I just never saw that for me. But it wasn't until I like really, figure out what my passions are and it's like true to myself that it started to make sense. So, I'm really, really involved, like, we're really passionate about like communal projects that are inclusive to like black people, and, whether it be like his projects are like inclusive to black people, because it provides a space for us to black people to be comfortable, but it also allows us to showcase our talents and our businesses in a market that is not really catered towards us.
Yeah.
And you know, I always of like interested in like inclusivity and including black people, and because we have a lot of culture, we just don't have a lot of space that we feel comfortable in to be our true selves. Like, you know, we go to these nice restaurants, but they're not for us. We're just there because they're nice, but we don't have nothing that's nice for us. Like, it's either if we have something that's like less than, is like ghetto, is run down. But I want to be in a position where we can have spaces that are equal to, you know, white people, where, because black people, we're not just ghetto, we're not just hood. There is black people that enjoy nice things, and there needs to be more places for us to, you know, go and feel comfortable, where we shouldn't have to code switch, where we shouldn't have to, you know, conform to white norms, but it should be to the same standard of these nice white places as well. So I think that's kind of been my passion, and it took me a while to kind of figure out what it is that, because architecture is broad. Like, in the beginning, I didn't know specifically what type of architecture I wanted to do, but I think I'm more so interested in the social aspect of, like, you know, providing spaces that are equal and inclusive to our people, on a social atmosphere more so than a built environment is kind of where I'm starting to think about.
I'd never even thought of architecture in that, like, from that, you know, reference point, I guess.
It's a social profession as well. Like, I mean, it's the built environment, but you got to think, these buildings, they serve as people. Like, it's all based on human interactions, just as important as the actual built building. So you got to consider it from just a social atmosphere. Like, who's it serving? Like, is it? And this is something that we, like, just throughout history, like, the built environment. Like, I don't know if you know about Baltimore, but like, Baltimore became what it is because of like redlining. I don't know if you're familiar with that term, and it's like
the black butterfly and the something.
Well, so redlining is more so like,
well, I meant the I think it's like some type of statistic that they did where it's like where white people are concentrated in the middle, and then the black people are more to the center. I mean, you know,
but it was like just racial, racial. The banks weren't giving black people the ability to buy land in certain areas, so black people were often, you know, only place that we could get a bank loan or get housing was in, you know, undesirable neighborhoods, and that's where black people started to concentrate. Like Roland Park is a white neighborhood, but it was redlined for black people. We couldn't get more. We couldn't get a home loan to go there, you know. So we were kind of forced into neighborhoods. And just, if you think of just architecture in that atmosphere, like Baltimore is so segregated because of racial disparities throughout. But that's a total social connotation of architecture.
And that's crazy to think that still has impacts today. Like, that was, you know, further, like, it's like such a long time ago. It's still like,
the difference between like now, like today, I think it still happens, but it happens for like gentrification. Like, DC is like top gentrification city, and you know, back then it was more like pure racism. Like, you know, black people, you can't come here. We're not supporting you getting a mortgage to buy this land.
And they raised the price.
Now it's like just pricing us out. Like, you know, white people were coming in, more money, buying his land, raising the rent, and pushing. Because like DC, for instance, it was called Chocolate City because it was a black city until recently. You know, people started to kind of buy in, and you know, the housing market went up. So people, the demographic of people is starting to change. So it's always been like architecture is a social thing as well, because it deals with people and racial disparities, and I think that's kind of where, you know, I want to start to lead into the, you know, the profession.
So I wanted to get in, say it was two things. So one was I had just thought about Virgil Abloh, because he's I think he has a master's in architecture.
He has a master's in architecture.
And you were just talking about like the broadness of it. Like, he's applying a lot of, you know, I guess like architectural, like his background, I guess, when it comes to design, like and putting it into fashion. So it's like it is a, you know, it's crazy in that sense. But I was also just gonna say, like, thanks for like sharing, you know, not only, you know, like like you shared your success, but you also like said, you know, like there was a point where, you know, like there was some struggle, and there was
it was a lot of. I mean, it wasn't until just more recently that I think it finally clicked for me. Like, you know, I knew I always wanted to be an architect, and I'm an architect, but I'm not even there yet. I still have to get licensed, but I think I'm on the right path. That, you know, when I do fully figure it out, that I'm positioned to really make things happen. But it like for me, it didn't really click. I just kind of was living life, you know, just making it by, you know. But I think now it's starting to click a little bit more, and I kind of can see the direction that I want to go in. But it takes trial and error. Like I said, I just turned 30, and it literally just started to click. Like, you know, and I think that's pretty standard. Like 20s is for you to make mistakes, to kind of figure out what you want to do. But I knew at 30, I kind of wanted to know exactly which direction I want to go, so I could really start applying it. But, you know, and I can speak for so many people who are just like graduating, not having a job, not really sure. And I can say like a lot of my colleagues where, you know, I went to school with, they're not even in the profession no more, because it was such a, like, it was hard to get a job, and, you know, you'll take a job in a different field and you kind of lose it. But I always knew that I was just like, yo, I'm gonna just stick with this. It'll come together at some point. But it wasn't until I met certain people, like, and that's why I was saying the network is so important, that it started to come together more so than, you know, because literally, had I not had my friend put me on with this guy in DC, I wouldn't be where I am right now. But a lot of that is not even off of education. That's just knowing these people and having these people trust you to do some stuff, and then you know, the ball starts rolling, and you know, that could land you in somewhere you never even foreseen yourself being in. Like I'd never foreseen myself at the company that I'm at, and maybe I just didn't, you know, wasn't confident in my ability. But until you know, get confident in things that you didn't even know was possible, you end up being possible. So but I would never say that, you know, you should. I mean, if it's something that you want to do, you should just stay on that path, stick to it, even though, you know, things is never, like, for me, my situation never just clicked like it needed to be. It was always just a trial and error. But, you know, you stick on your path, you could end up being, and I always say just always be ready, like, just be prepared, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, always have your stuff ready so you don't ever have to get ready. Like, you need to be prepared for any opportunity. Had I not been like, all right, like, when I started doing my freelance work, I never knew where that was going to take me, but I just was like, all right, working a 9 to 5, that's not getting me nowhere. I'm going to work a little harder so that I could do passion projects. And it goes back to Instagram. Like, I can't really post a lot of my work stuff, but if I'm doing side projects, I was able to start to post it on Instagram, and, you know, people say, oh, this is cool, and they, you know, that more opportunities come by me posting on Instagram, and that's literally just speaks to the power of social media, right?
Man, that's tough. So you had talked a little bit about like networking and the importance of networking. I have like a similar experience as well, because so I mentioned a couple times interning in Ohio, but that job that I had, actually my recruiter, she was like best friends with a woman that's working for the company that I'm at now, and so we had ended up like, it was like me and maybe like 2 other interns, but we had went out to eat, and we were just like sort of like chopping it up, like chilling, having fun. But I pretty much like just mentioned to the woman that's at the company that I'm at now, like, I'm more interested in software engineering. I was like, I want to code, I want to do these things, and she was just like, okay, like, so I like got her information, and then we ended up, you know, like pretty much getting like a referral, like for the like. And this was an internship as well, but I got a referral for the internship. So it was almost like just, you know, connections rather than, you know, just like kind of just getting straight into the door just off of, you know, skill sets and everything like that.
It's tough. Yeah. I mean, and a lot of, I was telling you, I was talking to my brother yesterday. He lives in Tokyo. He was kind of telling me, and I never really sat down and him tell me his story, but a lot of his, like, he's doing super well. Like I said, like, he's in Tokyo working on the ships. But his story was not like, he was like, and I'll just be brief on his story, but he was working at valet at I don't know if you know the Ritz-Carlton downtown. It's, higher end.
Was he Lies parking or?
It's Town Park. Town Park was it. So he was working at Town Park. I was working there too. So he was working there, but he was working at the Ritz-Carlton, which is one of their properties, which has like, it's resident people live there, but it's like the higher condos, real nice cars, like football players live down there, wealthy people live down there. So he was valeting down there, but he always had, my brother has like this real hard working, he's like a hard worker, like always been a hard worker. And he like, I remember I was valeting, I ain't really take it that serious, but any job that he had, he was the best at it. Wow. And I think the client, like the people who he was valeting the car, they noticed that. And one of the guys, like his wife was like, I think he said that one day she just asked him like, hey, what do you do? Like, you go to school, what are you going to school for? And he was like, yeah, he's an electrical engineer as well. He told her like, yeah, I'm going to Morgan for electrical engineering. And she was like, oh, my husband is a VP at General Dynamics. He was telling me, was just engineering firm. And she was like, I'm gonna have my husband come talk to you, Husband came talk to him. He submitted his resume, and that was his first like internship. You know what I'm saying? So like, I don't think like his school didn't do that, but it was just a networking situation that just literally plugged him in, and then from that, his whole career just started. He just moved off of that. Yeah. But it wasn't into like that like path is just so like, you don't foresee that, but it's just networking at that point. Yeah. Had he not, been the hard worker doing his job, that networking, opportunity would never happen. Yeah. But he capitalized on it, and that like sparked his career. Yeah,
I feel like people, because I've had like I've had experiences where I was able to network with people simply from valeting, right? And it was I don't know, like maybe people don't really see, because even for me, like I was like, man, I don't want to work, like I'm valeting, like it feels a little bit degrading at times. It do, yeah. But I guess like we also seeing the bright side of it, like I had made a connection, and I mean this is still like maybe a future endeavor, opportunity possibly, but and it was like just nice. So I was working at Town Park, but then I started working for ABC Services. Okay. But while I was working with them, I was working at the Magdalena, and so the Magdalena, that's owned by a black man. His name is Eddie Brown. So like I was like connecting with a few of the guys that worked for his firm. But while I was there, I parked somebody's car. Well, so I don't even know like how it happened really, but it was just a black man. He came in and he had a really nice car, and I saw a book on the side of on his chair, and it was The House of Morgan, and that book is pretty much about how J.P. Morgan, how he's become how the bank has become what it is, but it was like pretty much about like the family, the Morgan family, so like John Pierpont and like a few other people. But I had just simply like asked him about the book, and we had like started talking about like just certain stuff, and he had invited me to his company. So it was, the guy's name is Joseph Haskins, but he owns a black bank in Baltimore, the Harbor. Is it Harbor Bank Shares? Dang, now it's not. I can't remember the name of his bank, but pretty much it was just like I was able to like just come up to his corner office downtown and just be able to see a black man as like a CEO of a bank, and just being able to just have that connection, and that just simply came from
just valeting, right? Yeah. And I remember like when I was a valet, everybody was saying you never know who you'll meet, but as when you're younger, you don't look at it that way, like you know what I'm saying. And I think my brother, he always was thinking ahead, like, so he was always just a good person, and good people, good things come to good people. Yeah. But like I said, had he not been prepared, like resume ready, like prepared, you always got to be prepared for, because you never know when that opportunity might. You got like, if an opportunity come on, you got to be able to jump on it at at quick notice. You know what I'm saying? Because those opportunities, like even like that, like had he not been prepared to send his resume and to speak to the guy, that opportunity would have never happened, and his whole trajectory wouldn't be what it is because he wasn't prepared for that.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah.
That's tough. I don't know how much you can talk about it, but like I don't. Your company that you are starting up now. Well, I don't know how long you've been working on it. Is it
actually
Better Life?
For Better Living.
For Better Living.
So like I said, I grow cannabis in DC. It's legal in DC because DC isn't a state. So cannabis is typically regulated by the state level. And by DC being a district and not a state, the law is a little bit different. So within the laws, you're allowed to cultivate up to a certain amount of plants in your residence. You know, and the DC culture is like a lot of people are doing it. But as someone from Baltimore, like when I got out here, I was just like amazed at just how much cannabis is like relevant. You know what I'm saying? Like in Baltimore, it's still like totally underground, but up here, it's a little bit different. It's like dispensaries, there's pop-ups, there's like, and a pop-up is basically just vendors like selling their product. Like it's still underground, but a lot, like, you know, it's a different culture. So one of my friends from high school, he's been in DC for a while, probably like 10 years. And he was into, you know, this profession. And, you know, I always would be inspired by him, seeing everything that he was doing. And it wasn't until COVID that I was like, all right, like I was working from, during COVID, I was working from home. My company was laying off people. I thought I was like next to get laid off. And I was just like, yo, like if I get laid off, what am I going to do? So I was like, let me just, and I'm working from home. I'm like, let me use this time to really like gain a skill. And I told him straight out, I was like, bro, like, I see what you're doing. Like, I want to tap into this. Like, you know, can you teach me how to do this shit? And he's a good guy because he taught me, no money up front. He ain't want nothing from me. He just, out of kind of his heart, kindness of his heart, he sat down and taught me this, like, you know, just the pure like science of the shit, like how it's done. And it was for me to kind of figure out the business part of it. So it wasn't like, what's this, 2021? I would say like, I've been doing it for about a year. Like I'm still fairly new into it, but I always was into like branding and social media. So I always had that component. I just needed a business to attach to it. So then when I learned the craft of like just how to do it, you know, I started to take it more serious. And you know, it's been like I said, I'm still growing. Like I'm not. My business is still at its beginning stages, but every harvest is getting better. You know what I'm saying? Like I have an event component to it, because and I don't know if you're familiar with like just the cannabis culture in like LA, but like cookies and you heard of cookies, like you know, and it wasn't until recently that cannabis became like branded, like the bags and all of that,
and then also just like the like almost like weed connoisseurs, like you know, when it comes to just like the different strains and like the effects of it and all of those different
like
stuff.
Back in the day, like back in the day, I didn't smoke that much, but I do remember like it was like 3 types of weed back in the day. It was like Diesel, Haze, and
Reggie.
Reggie, yeah. I mean Reggie always gonna be a thing, but it's Diesel, Haze, and Diesel, Haze. Forget the last one. Anyway, but it wasn't until like recently that just weed became more mainstream and all these new strands, flavors is starting to pop up. It's becoming a little more acceptable. Like I can say now, like, you know, weed is not an under the table thing. Like people will spark anywhere now. Like it's not really a frowned upon thing. Like everybody do it. Like, and I don't know, like in your setting, but literally everybody is a part of this culture now, and it's becoming more mainstream. Sort of like just alcohol. But I knew that's something that I wanted to tap in. By me being in DC and being able to do this legally, I wanted to maximize my time here by getting involved with it early, because it's going to spread. It's going to spread. It's already spread it into like Virginia,
I think
New York, New Jersey. It's spreading, and I wanted to be in it before it became like big.
Right.
So
you have like a vision for it, like how large you would like it to be.
I mean, that's the issue. Like scaling the business up is the hard part, because I don't want to go totally like corporate with it. Because if you try to get like warehouse space, they tax you. It's like, to me, is right now is a hobby. I think, I treat cannabis as like a social currency. It allows me to collaborate.
That's true.
And I'm like really using it to collaborate. Like I want to do events and stuff. Like I'm working on a whole partnership with a record company, not a big time record company, but a smaller local record company, where we're going to go into partnership and host events and but involve the cannabis part of it. So I'm more so using it as something to offer. Like, I can partner with different brands and provide, strands of weed to kind of, associate with them and just seeing where that takes me. I don't really know my end goal yet because it kind of started as a hobby. And the issues really right now is just scaling up. Like I'm limited to the amount of space that I have. But until I figure out like what's next, like until I get a lot more space, my level of scaling is gonna be tough. So I really don't even know where I foresee myself going with it. Right now it's just based on like partnerships and combining with other companies to do things that I'm interested in. Like I've always been interested in throwing events, hosting cool stuff, being in the culture, and I think cannabis right now is an avenue for me to kind of get into that.
Good. So trying to I do notice that it's 208. I don't know like what you were saying that you
So I was actually going to ask you, are you going to Baltimore after this?
Yeah.
You think I can ride to Baltimore with you?
That's fine.
All right, bet. Yeah, and I'm I don't have to go out there until 4:30 anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, we good.
All right, bet. So how this is one thing that I know that I wanted to talk about, but just as far as like so architecture and also like style, like I know that like, or at least I've like observed like you have like a good sense of just like fashion, like even like when it comes down to like I noticed like a lot of your pictures just like photography, like how you taking your photos or just that like art sense in general. Like do you look at yourself like an artist or like do you like how would you
so, and that's I always say this, like, because I think social media allows like anybody can really see something. Like I remember like style, for instance, back in the day it was harder to have a unique style. Well, it was easier to have a unique style because now it's like everything is put in your face. You can get whatever you want, like so there's a lot of people that just look the same, and because you can see it on Instagram and everyone knows where you can get it. Everybody can look the same. You can get whatever you want. But I think something that I feel like I always had, I just had good taste. Like I think taste, you can't really teach people taste. Like you can buy whatever you want, you can spend all the money, but until you have good taste, and good taste could be into fashion, it can be into like photos. It's just your interest. You know what I'm saying?
Interior design.
Yeah, interior design. It's all just your taste. Like what you acquired, what you think looks cool. Yeah, and I think that's something you just can't. It's either you have it or you don't. But and not to say that I always had it. I don't know where. I always, just my upbringing. I think I always just was into like. I don't know. I like certain things. It's just based on your interests. You just like certain things. You gravitate towards certain things. Yeah. I like clean, minimal things. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Yeah, and then I think a lot of it just having to do with just the company you keep. Like I guess like all my friends, we are into very similar things. So being able to bounce ideas with them allows you to really to start to develop your taste. But I think it's important, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, because easily someone can pick up on, like, you gravitate towards something you like if I see, you know, somebody outside with nice things that I'm interested in, I'm more gravitated to be like, yo, who's this guy? Like, you know, I would work with him.
Yeah.
Like, I like his perspective. I like, you know, what he's into. I would want to work with him. And I realized that having that, and I actually picked this up from like when I worked in retail. I was telling you I worked selling suits at Men's Warehouse, but I was a younger guy, and you know, I had a certain taste that was different than the older people that worked there. So I felt like I did a lot better with like retail because people were starting to trust my taste as a younger person than you know, an older person. And I've always like, and I remember one time my manager was like, he always told me like, selling suits, a lot of it has to just do with your presentation. Like, you don't even need to know what you're talking about, but if you look the part, you look clean, you look, you know, well dressed, you're gonna sell it yourself. Like, you're just gonna be able to. They're gonna trust whatever you say because of how you look.
Yeah.
And that's so important. Like, even now, like, I think it's important to have your own image because it's like, and I notice that now, like with my current job, like. One thing I told myself that I was never going to switch. I'm going to be my true, like, I'm never about to wear a shirt and tie no more. Like, I'm not about to come to work in dress pants and slacks. Like, I'm going to always just be myself because somebody's going to be interested in, you know, that, you know what I'm saying? That, and that's what I feel like I offer different. You know what I'm saying? So I'm going to always be focused on, you know, my, you know, taste level and because somebody's gonna notice it and be interested in that unique perspective.
That's a good point.
But it's like, you know, it's always good to have that because it like it goes hand in hand with social media. Like, your social media is a piece of your person, like, and you have the ability to put your taste, whether it be in your dress and to your social media as well, because people pay attention to it. Like, a lot of stuff is based off of visuals, like, and I know people shouldn't prejudge, like, but just as humans, we see something and we automatically prejudge based off of what the person got on, like, you know, what type of image they're putting off. And I know that's like not good to do, but acknowledging that that's a thing, and you know, your presentation is like so much to do with that.
But you had mentioned just like the fact that you were talking about just, you know, bringing your authentic self, and I was like I hadn't even thought of that. Just you know, like somebody is gonna, you know, appreciate that. And basically you are a business, and you know, like whatever, like everything that you bring to the table, like who you are, that can be beneficial in some space like that. I never
and it's like, I mean, that's regardless of like your taste, nobody can take from you your knowledge. Like, you know, I'm educated, I went to school, I know what I'm talking about, so, you know, I feel like I can look a certain part because you can't take what I know. Like, if we have a conversation, we really talk business, I can able to engage with you without having on a shirt and tie or without having on, and I think a lot of that got to do with just Pharrell, like, not to put JayZ and Pharrell back in the conversation, but those are people that are like totally know what they're talking about in their industry and carry themselves how they their true selves. And I think, you know, kind of seeing how they move, you know, make me feel confident that as long as I know what I'm talking about, I can have these conversations, I can be my total self and have my taste, show my taste, whether it be visually in my person or social media. And that's, you know, and on my social media, like, I part of it, I was torn if I should, you know, showcase my other business, but I also feel like that's a part of me. Like, that doesn't mean that I can't do architecture. That doesn't mean that, you know, I don't know what I'm talking about, but a part of me is I smoke weed like a lot, and you know, that's who I am. You know what I'm saying? But that don't make me lesser of a designer or that I can't do my work because I still be able to do it.
Shit, even like this, you know, this this discussion, it'll like, that's showing, you know, that you're not just like zoned out, you know what I mean? Like those perceptions of, you know, marijuana.
But I think it's also, you know, times have changed. Times have changed, and times has changed for sure. Like, the days of just the negative persona of being like a just deadbeat stoner is I think is starting to die off. And I think it's relevant too, because another thing about myself, prior to recently, and I don't share this with too many people, but I had some drinking issues growing up, like not in crazy, but just in college I used to just, what every other person do, just get totally drunk all the time.
Right, yeah.
And, I got into some legal issues for that, and, I had to figure out what my vice was. Like, I was coping with alcohol, but that's not really the best thing to do. And I almost messed my life up. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, I had to kind of figure it out, because I know I couldn't really be doing certain things that I've been doing. And everybody liked to relax and let loose. And I just felt like cannabis was kind of a means of me to be more responsibly and, still relax and let go, but in a more safe, because alcohol could really cause some issues, and it's crazy that it's legal, and cannabis has the negative connotation to it. So we trying to change that dynamic, and I think the world is starting to realize that it isn't as bad as it's portrayed. So,
and I know you said you didn't want to bring Pharrell and JayZ back into the conversation, but I do want to, like, I know that, we sort of spoke on it as far as like him, like those two being role models, or like, those like a good representation of like what's possible. But did you have any like role models or mentors coming up, like I guess starting off in college or like even in high school? Like, was there anybody that you could like just like that you saw that was like, okay, I know that I want to be a professional because this person is doing this, or like
I didn't really have like an inspirational male figure. I mean, I would say my mom, she was very important to my upbringing because she's so hardworking, and she made sure her family was good, type of situation. But as far as like a male influence, it wasn't until like just recently being out here and working with, the guy I was talking about in DC, and that's who I kind of look up to as like my male influence right now. But I never really had like someone professionally that I like looked up to. It's just because it's not a lot of, think about it, it's not a lot of representation of black, men that's doing things, professionally. And like I said, by me being like the first person in college in my family, I just didn't have that. So, I just kind of had to use what I saw on social media as inspiration, and kind of mimic that. But I didn't have nobody like telling me, and I still feel like I don't have that as a, growing adult. A lot of this is me figuring it out. Like, I didn't have a male be like, oh, this is what you need to do. You need to look into this. Nah. I would say a lot of it is just kind of looking digitally at male idols and kind of mimicking what they're doing.
Yeah.
For sure.
I feel that. And that was, and we spoke on it a little bit earlier, but that was like my, I guess, vision for this because it's not just right in your face. It's like we don't necessarily like, a lot of us, I guess, or a lot of black men and women like have a similar experience coming up in the city. So it was like my vision was to like put that out there, you know what I mean? To like show that like there are, black professionals out that you can connect with.
Right. I'm sorry.
You could, yeah. Dang, I didn't realize there was that many people in there.
Yeah, nah, people really be out there. Like it's almost like a resort.
Yeah, no, this is nice as nice as hell.
It's like a resort in here. Like, people really be out here, drinking, having a little good time at the pool.
Yeah, bro, this is Four Seasons. Are they waving at us? Oh.
Who's right? But
just I think we were talking about like role models and just being able to put that on display and like just let people know, that there are black people doing certain things and like there are black people doing, more than what's put out there. I think like there's so I don't know if you listen to that many podcasts, but I was spending some time. Oh snap! I didn't realize that disconnect. You could like test it again.
Test.
Yeah.
Are we good?
Well, say it one more time.
Test.
Yeah. It's on there. What was I about to say? So I've been watching a few podcasts. Like I was watching like the Joe Rogan Experience, and I was watching like Tom Bilyeu. So like they're two, white men, but they would like bring on people, mostly like white men, and they would bring them on and they would talk about, like just their experiences or like, the roles that they have, like what they do. They, a lot. I talk about this often, but a lot of them they do like ultra marathons. Like they like, they cycle. They just have like really, they live interesting lifestyles, but there was just this aspect where like I didn't feel like I related that much because it was, they were white men. So it was like, it was a point where like, I was like, man, this is motivational, but it was like, I would like to see that, that side of black people, because there are black people doing, different things, like different professions, just like doing really interesting stuff, but I just don't think that it's like, out there, And then also, I noticed that when these hosts, they would bring on someone black or black professionals, but it just didn't feel as in depth or as authentic, or they wouldn't be able to. I don't know if they could completely like relate to what they were saying or like really fully grasp like some of the concepts. And like I noticed that they would like kind of like jump over certain stuff, like they wouldn't go into depth. So it was like I definitely feel like there's a need, to like get that out there, just to show those experiences. And
I think the biggest part is just being authentic. Like I was saying, like a lot of companies are putting people of color in these positions, but part of being a person of color is living that experience that people of color like. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of like, people of color that live well and live, in spaces with white people, and those are typically the corporate, But to have someone who's like literally, brought up in urban, like I said, I've been around black. Like I still struggle to this day of just like, something that I always work with is just being able to communicate with, white people. But a lot of it is just having different backgrounds. Like we don't relate, but you still have to, be able find that connection to engage. And that's something that I actively try to work on. Yeah. Because like I said, I've been in the Baltimore City school system all my life, so it's been always black, and then I went to HBCU right after that. So I always was missing that skill to work with like white people. So it's when I'm in spaces where it's primarily white, I have to figure out ways to make that connection because we don't have a similar experience. Like just our upbringing is different, so our interests are different. So a lot of the things that they talk about, we don't relate to. But having that common ground of just being able to, And when I first moved to DC, I lived in an apartment with 4 other roommates, all like white guys, and I knew that I needed to put myself in a situation that I'm always around. White people, so I can learn, and they live differently than us. Like I said, they they bike, they do all of this, they eat different. But I had to figure that out. So when I moved out here, I was like, all right, I'm going to put myself in this weird situation. In order to get it, because I work with them, so I need to really start to understand them. So I lived with 4 white guys for 8 months when I first moved out here, and I think it was beneficial because it helped me to kind of understand them as people, because I never dealt with them in Baltimore.
Same. and that is like, so not to like put down, you know, the HBCU experience. Of course, like it's really important for us to, you know, have a lot of people go to these universities in order to, because a lot of people are like really, you know, our talented black people that they want to go to these PWIs because like as far as like the quality of education, like they might feel that, you know, the HBCU doesn't have the same level of you know, education.
Yeah, no, and that's sometimes debatable.
Yeah, but I think if we put more of us, like if we encourage people more to go into HBCUs, I think like the quality will like
go up.
Really go
right.
up because you know, like everybody, if we all want to go there, you know what I mean. But I was just gonna say that that was one of my I felt like I had missed out on that, like going to Morgan. I think like it was like I was around black people, I was around the same experience. So I think that if I would have went to maybe a predominantly white, you know, school, or I think that I would have been able to like, you know, experience those like just to prepare me more for, you know, the corporate world.
But I think a lot of what HBCUs do is because, you know, you need to learn about us as people. Like you need to, you know, like I think there's so much importance to just
being around
us,
learning
about us, having some sort of like, because I think, you know, someone graduating from an HBCU and someone's graduating from a PWI, there's a different level of like black understanding and black like appreciation that those two students have, because just the cultural experience in the HBCU is totally different than and yes, you lack some of the white people skills, but you can learn that in the profession. But I think some of the black concepts that we learn in undergrad, you can't get that back after college. Like once you miss that, you like from a PWI. I have friends that went to PWIs and they sometimes wish they went to a HBCU because of
same thing.
Right, and then just the connections of that, like it's a different level of connections that you get from an HBCU versus a PWI. And also I think part of it is like, and I also was torn like based on what school, like thinking that a degree, at the end of the day, I think a degree is a degree. Yes, certain schools have different names, like that hold weight, but a lot of it just has to do with after school. Like, I'm not saying like I originally went to Hampton, and sometimes I think like if I would have graduated from Hampton, would my life be different than it is at Morgan? And I think social media allow like, you know, it doesn't matter where you are, because social media makes the world smaller. So I always wonder like, would I be in a different place if I had went there? But I don't think so. I think a degree is a degree. It's what you know do with the degree, and the people you talk to afterwards is what makes your degree relevant.
And also just like focus. Like I think going like regardless of what school you go to, if you're focused and if you want to learn the information and you grasp the concepts and you like fully, you know, take in what it is you're studying, I think that it just like, because I think now it's more like once you get out of college, it's more based on like what you know and also like connections and stuff like that. But like I feel like a lot of companies now, well, not a lot of companies, but there are companies now that care more so about the skill sets that you have rather than like, you know, if you came from this college or that college. It's like, do you have this experience under your belt, or do you have the knowledge to of certain things? Like when it comes like for coding, like if you go into like a software engineering role or something like that, not all companies, but there are companies that like they'll just test you. You know, they'll test you like, oh, like, you know, code this, right? And then like that'll be like, oh, well, I mean, he might not even have a college degree, or he has a degree from this school, we never heard of it, but he definitely knows how to do this. So it's just like, you know, a lot of it, you know, is like just you know, taking in the information rather than like the name of the school.
Right. For sure. Sure.
The one thing that one of my experiences at Morgan was I noticed a lot of the classes there was, and I mean, this is at Morgan, but I'm sure it's at a bunch of colleges too. But there's like a certain level of finesse or like cheating when it comes to like certain classes.
And I hate to say this, I cheated my whole career.
Yeah,
I cheated my whole school career, and I think part of that is just learning how to cheat is important because like a part of life is finesse.
Yeah, like
believe it or not, like the most successful people in this world has finesse. Like so a part of that is learning how to finesse. Like I can say that I finessed my career wise a little bit, and it's not finesse in a negative way, but you gotta be able to make things work. You know what I'm saying? You have to be creative to make things work. So
I had this my bad, but I had one of my coworkers, he's Indian, but he was talking about how like he took an opportunity, like well not took an opportunity, but he pretty much he wanted a role. Like I think he might have wanted to like change roles, or he wanted to do something where he wanted to gauge a person of like a different like level. They might have been like a managing director or something like that. But he wanted to get a better relationship with them. So he was talking about like how he found out where the guy goes like sometimes after work like to a bar, and then he kind of like bumped into him.
You kind of got to do that.
But like that finesse is
and I don't think it ain't nothing wrong with that, but that's what separates greats from like thinking on that level is what separates someone who's waiting for it to happen or waiting for something to be handed out to them, and actually making it happen. So a lot of that plays into, and I think you learn that through school. Like like for me, like I knew that I wasn't going to be able, like some of the things that I wanted for myself wasn't going to happen in Baltimore. Like I just knew that wasn't going to like happen. So for that to happen, I would have to leave. And like, so I knew like, all right, I knew when I was in school, I knew I was about to graduate. I was like, I need to start applying to jobs out here because that's the only way that, I felt like I was going to be able to get the things that I wanted for myself. But you got to think that way. And you can't just wait for something to happen. You have to be proactive and put yourself in situations where it can happen. Like even like just this week, I went to there's a creative agency in Northeast DC. They had an event, and I was talking to the founder on Instagram for a little bit. But I, made sure that I came out so that I can put a name to a face, and just having that name to a face, who knows what avenues that are open up later. But you got to put yourself in that position so that if there is an opportunity to come up, I'm ready for it. And he now knows my face, name to a face. So if there's a position where he needs some design help, I would be the person that he could reach out to because we've made that connection.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of how you gotta think about it. Like you really gotta be proactive and not just wait. Because if you just wait around, you never know when it's gonna come. And I think college teaches that skill. At least from my experience, I think that it teaches that skill.
Yeah,
for sure.
But going back to the cheating part though, do you feel that because so you'll pass, right, and you'll get your degree, but there comes a time, or it might come a time where you're in your field and there's something that you don't necessarily know as well as you could have because you didn't like really figure that part out. Like, have you ran into any issues? Or I think I've ran into some.
I think you can run into that issue, but again, you need to just figure it out. Like you can figure it out. Like a lot of times, excuse me. If I have run into that situation, you got to be able to figure it out. You just got to figure it out. Put that time in.
That's true. Now, is there like, my bad, do you feel like there's a different, I guess, being in the role and being paid, to be in that role is like, and then also just like having a job, so you have like a certain sense of necessity, I guess, to do it. I don't know, like maybe that's a bad perception, like when it comes to like education, like schooling. But But yeah, I feel like there's like more of a necessity when those scenarios come up for me to be like, all right, like let me buckle down and like figure this out so that I can, you know, get past this, rather than like I could have done it, you know, while I was in school.
Yeah, and I mean, but I also think a lot of stuff that you learn in school is just filler stuff, like, you know what I'm saying? Because think about it, like math, like we took math up into high school, college. Other than basic math, like, are you using sine, cosine? Like, no, like I'm not using that in life. Like,
yeah, bro.
So yeah, like, you know,
bro,
cheating, you know. I remember back in high school, we all like, we never did, like I never did homework. We would all like take turns doing homework and then just circulate it.
That's tough.
Around the, you know, our like team of cheating people at school, circulated before class. So, you know, but whatever you gotta do to make it, you know what I'm saying? Like, think about it. High school is irrelevant now. Like, it's irrelevant. You just gotta get through it. But that doesn't really, I mean, it does start to build the foundation of your life, but after high school, it's so much life after that. Even at the college, like, yeah, it builds fundamentals to who you're going to be in life. But, you know, college, whether you do well or, you know, whether you're the best student, whether you're a bad student, that's not the end. Because like I said, I wasn't by far the best student in college.
Yeah.
But, you know, you still got time to turn it around.
Right. Yeah, that's
for
true.
Sure.
That's definitely true. Well, I know we definitely touched on a whole lot of advice, but is there any, like, you know, I guess anything that comes to mind as far as like advice to like a young guy, or like, you know, coming up, maybe graduating high school, or like, you know, having like similar experiences coming up in the city, like they might not necessarily have a role model, like, you know, like just they might be struggling with something. Like, is there any like advice that you would give, or, you know, advice that you would give yourself, you know, like coming up, like, you know?
Yeah, I think just realizing, like, you know, us as, you know, people from Baltimore or just urban atmospheres, we offer unique perspectives to, you know, this changing demographic of life, or just, you know, I think we offer a unique perspective, and just being true to yourself. Like, you know, if you have an interest, like, you don't have to formulate yourself to be, you know, if you don't have a mentor, or like I never knew what it meant to be an architect, like, or like what an architect looks like, what a black architect looks like. So me being true to myself, I feel like I can set those standards of what, you know, that is, or what that looks like, because I never really had a mentor, or, you know, or there is even like representation of what a black architect is. So, you know, being true to yourself, you can start to define, you know, some of these things. So I would just say, you know, find your passion, stay true to yourself, and you define your lane. Like, I think it's so much power to, like, you know, defining your lane, because I feel like, personally, I feel like I'm in a lane of my own, you know what I'm saying? And it's because I defined what it means to be who I am. Like, I don't want to be one-dimensional. I don't want to be, you know, a corporate architect. I want to be myself. I want to have my interests. I like culture. I like music. I like, you know, these things, and I want to put that into what it means to be a black architect to me. Like, I think a black architect should be connected with, you know, culture. I think, you know, like Virgil, like, you know, for instance, like how he's redefined of, he's, you know, professionally educated as an architect, but you see where he's going, and he's defining what it means to be a designer to him. And I think, you know, there's opportunity as, you know, things start to change, as newer designers are starting to come up. There's, you know, avenues to start to define yourself, and, you know, not be following the societal norms. You can start to showcase your inner person, and define, you know, that job title. And I think keep staying true to yourself, and just make sure, like, knowing that you offer something unique is what I would, you know, express as just something to just.
That's great.
Yeah, for sure.
Good looking. Yo, Zig, I appreciate you, bro.
Already, bro. Appreciate you.
I was gonna ask, is there anything that you wanted to, like, you know, plug, or like as far as like business or like something that you're working on that you want to like put up?
Yeah, so I can't speak on too much, but like For Better Living is my cannabis company. Looking to have some collaborative events with the local record company that I'm working on right now, is to have some programming and activities coming soon, probably like October or so. ByZig Studio is my architectural design firm that I do freelance work, and I try to partner with black businesses primarily on that. Something else I want to plug, and I think that's it.
Yeah,
that's it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, my bad. One other thing.
Yeah.
What so freelancing, you can is that almost like contract? Like is there like I'm going back. So I have this vision where I can work three months out of the year. Like I can do a job and then just like make, I don't know, 6 figures off of this one job, and just like chill for the rest of the year because I did. You know what I mean? So
like for instance, like my studio, ByZig Studio, I'm contracted with a colleague right now on a current project that I'm working on. Colleague I went to school with, her company, she was presented a pretty big project with a big budget, and it doesn't last a span of a year, but the budget is good enough that she can knock this project out. And she's in school as well, so she can knock the project out and can live off of the project after the project is done because the budget is reasonable. So it's like, it just kind of depends on the project you get. Like, if you get a decent sized project, you're able to, live off that and not have to, because I think the goal eventually is just not to work for someone else. Like, I think time is the most important thing in life, is just because you don't get your time back. Money comes and goes, time just goes, you know what I'm saying? So you want to, like, I think part of it is just working on your own schedule and doing things that you're passionate about. Like when you work a 9 to 5, is you're working on someone else's schedule and you're not necessarily always working on something that you're totally passionate about. But I think the goal is to be positioned where you're scheduling your time and you're only spending your time on things that you want to spend your time on. And whether that being, landing a big project that you're able to work that project out for 3 months and live off of the fee for 4 months, that's for you to cater or, figure that out. But that's always an option of, I think that's the end goal is, ByZig Studio, when I eventually get licensed, I want to be able to be selective on the projects that I work on and start, work on bigger projects so that I can bring on, the goal is to bring on a team that's black and,
that's tough.
So that's the goal. Cause like right now I collaborate, when I do land projects, I collaborate on a contractual basis with my peers. Like I'll bring on, like my last project I worked on, I brought on a peer of mine, and we figured it out together. But it wasn't a total project. It was just like probably about a span of like a month and a half. But it's good to be able to contract in my peers and keep it totally black. You know what I'm saying? Is the goal.
That's tough. Well, thanks again, bro.
No,
I really
no problem,
appreciate
bro.
it, dog. This is great, man.
No problem. No, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was gonna be. I thought it was good. No problem.